Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the RepPath Leadership Podcast. Today we have a great guest. I'm very excited to have him on the show. Before I introduce him, guys, as always, please make sure that you're submitting your questions from this moment on. My podcast producer James will track and hang on to all those comments, questions, anything you have. Please submit it into the chat. And then about halfway through the show, about around 3:30, we'll pause. So we'll take some Q&A from the crowd. So please, any thoughts, questions, please ask us, and we'll address throughout the show. On top of that, guys, if any of you want to see this recording, please go on my YouTube channel, Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching, and you'll be able to get this and all the other content that we have saved with all the other previous podcasts that we've done. So without further ado, I want to thank our guest today. My guest is Joel Barczak. Very excited to have him on the show. I've known Joel for a few years now and worked with, his reps in the past. And Joel's just an outstanding leader. I'm not just saying that because I'm staring at him on this podcast right now. It's the truth. And his team, they, to this day, they nothing but good things to say about him. Today, we have him as our guest for our topic, career growth and personal development. So, Joel, thank you for coming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Joe. You made me blush a little bit there. All those good things.
That's the truth, man. Jordan loves you, man. We talk about you all the time. So it really is the truth. And I thank you for joining us. And just to give everyone a little bit of background, tell us a little bit about your, you don't have to walk us through like you're giving us your resume, but just tell us a little bit about yourself and what's currently going on now.
Sure. I'm a 20 plus year veteran in healthcare with, experience in pharma, specialty pharma and nuclear, and the med device space as well, capital equipment, and then commodities and med surge. So really a broad swath of healthcare, and we've had some unique fun stops, and have had the good fortune to lead a lot of great people. And a lot of those folks that have developed relationships with over the past 20 years, and I joke with a lot of people about this. They're like, geez, I'd love to work for you again. And I said, that's really not how this works. Usually the next round is when I go to work for them. And that's kind of the career phase that I'm in. So
that's awesome. I love it. And so to one of the things that comes up on every podcast, a lot of these individuals trying to break in, they think that, you get this impression that people are like born into this industry, and they were just, you were always a leader in the industry. So if you could tell us, go back to when you broke in and, how did that happen? And, what attracted you to the medical field?
Great question. And I'll rewind to when I had hair and it was the color of yours. So long time ago, I was playing football in college, and my senior year, I had a knee injury. My first game of the season against the University of Arizona, and I was fortunate. It wasn't a complete MCL tear. So I had about 4 or 5 weeks that I could rehab and come back. And through that process with our athletic trainer and our orthopedic surgeon, that group, I got introduced to a rep that was, kind of the 11th hour getting me fitted for a brace. And he and I kind of hit it off, and, we had to get measurements and all that stuff. And he had, I think he played at the University of New Mexico. And, so kind of, I didn't have any interest at the time because I was still in college. And But I put that in the back of my mind, had a great kind of interaction. I saw how he interacted with our athletic trainer and the orthopedic surgeon, and very consultative and really a cool interaction. And again, I didn't think anything of it because it's not what I was thinking about at that phase of life. And then, kind of fast forward, I was coaching football and had recently, gotten married, and my wife and I kind of looked at each other and said, "Okay, this was fun for you to, pursue a passion, but it's time for you to get a real job." And so I scratched my head and said, "Geez, what do I do?" And I remembered this engagement, my senior year of college, and I'm like, you know, that was really a pretty unique relationship that this guy had with the orthopedic surgeon and our athletic trainer, and really what a cool, kind of interface that they had. So I was like, I think I'd like to go into medical sales. I did some recruiting for our defensive coordinator. So I had a little bit of exposure to sales, but not a lot. So I, had, leveraged some relationships in the medical community to get some interviews, and I had the opportunity to go to work for a small mom and pop home health agency in El Paso, Texas. And it wasn't very sophisticated at all. I had to knock on a bunch of doors, but it was great for me to exercise some resilience and, show some initiative. And, what I learned was, that I worked for a great company, but access was really hard. And we weren't very sophisticated, and I needed some training. So I went into the pharmaceutical industry, which had a great training program and gave me the structure that I needed as a young sales rep to really thrive and kind of take the next steps in my career. So, that's kind of, and not to belabor with too much detail, but that's how I got in and kind of took my next step, and, kind of, being self-aware to go, okay, I want to do something beyond what I'm doing in home health, but how do I do that? And what am I really looking for out of that? And for me, it was that structure and training that I really needed. And I just ate that up with a spoon, and just loved everything about that engagement. Was just a sponge, taking all that training in, and that mentorship and leadership that I got there.
That's awesome. I mean, and because what I love about this story, I mean, there's many things, but it's not like you had 5 years of experience in
Yeah.
sales that, and you had all this statistical, sales results. And then finally you got this home health. So what would you say? Because we're always talking about with other individuals in the academy that are trying to break in from different industries. And they say, I don't have sales experience, Joe. What would you say that were the transferable skills that you felt that you had that helped you get that first role?
Really transferable skills as a communicator, and I was coaching, so teaching people fundamental skills. I think of it this way: skills to drills to practice to scrimmage, and scrimmage to game. And when you talk about sales and communication, teaching is really a fundamental component of that. So you take the experience that you do have, and then you apply that to where you want to go. And for some jobs, that's not going to be enough. If I were looking to start with a highly technical, highly consultative job at that time in my career, that would have been a no-go. But starting and getting my foot in the door with a mom and pop shop, they would take a chance and give me the exposure. Now it was up to me to figure out and leverage that for all it was worth. You're demonstrating your initiative, your versatility. You got to be a gadget person because there's nobody else doing what needs to be done. So that, kind of selecting the right fit. And, a lot of times you go, wow, that's really a cool job.
Right.
Well, and they are, but you've got to have the requisite experience in order to do that. Sort of like, trying to go to the major leagues if you never played Little League before. You really got to go to Little League before you ascend that ladder.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And what advice would you give to young reps that are looking to break into this industry today?
I love this. Something my mother-in-law says, and the older I get, the smarter my parents are. And I remember a long time ago, we had moved. I moved my wife from Florida to West Texas, and that was a tough transition. And my mother-in-law kept telling us, "You got to bloom where you're planted. You got to bloom where you're planted." And I heard that over and over again. And really, wherever it is that you are in your career, be there and leverage that for everything that's worth, because that foundation that you're building is enormously valuable. So how you perform, your track record, even though it may not be in the healthcare space, what you're doing there, when you get the right fit, somebody's going to say, this is exactly the type of person that I've been looking for. They're demonstrating tremendous resilience. They've got great initiative. They're willing to drive all night to get done what needs to get done. And they're versatile. They're a gadget person. They can do whatever it takes to get the job done. And they're self-aware. So those things that my mother-in-law rings in my head, bloom where you're planted. So if you want to go somewhere, be awesome where you are at currently.
That's awesome. Yeah. And it's funny because I get a lot of candidates that are taking B2B sales roles as like a stepping stone.
Right.
And they ask me all the time, they're like, well, Joe, how long do I have to stay at XYZ company? And I always say to them, guys, it's not about how long you have to stay. Right now, be the best sales rep at that company.
Yeah.
Be the best. And then the timing and all that stuff will take care of itself.
The doors, and I don't want to sound too hocus pocus, but if you perform, you do a great job, the doors are going to open for you. And part of that is just a confidence thing.
Yeah.
When you go, if you feel like you don't have the skill set and the experience to compete, people smell that all over you.
Right.
But if you've kicked ass in a B2B role and you go, hey, you know what? I may not have the 2 to 5 years of experience that you're looking for in healthcare, but let me tell you what I have done. And let me tell you the adversity that I've forwarded to get where I am today. That's going to resonate with somebody. It won't resonate with everybody, but it will. And when the fit is right, and then you're going to just soak it up like a sponge, and you're going to be like a pig in mud. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So today we're obviously the topic is about career progression. So you were discussing before how you took that home health role, then you got into pharma.
Yes.
What were some of the pivotal moments that you felt helped you break into the leadership management sector?
The first, and this is not rocket science, but performance is the kind of the first toll gate that I would say. If you perform, that's going to open people's eyes. So figuring out, and there's some territories are, relatively small, some are large, so you might have, micro markets within your overall territory and, kind of, figuring out where your pockets of opportunity are. But performance is that first toll gate that will open people's eyes. Second is, when you get an opportunity to shine, you've got to far exceed that. And I'll give you a quick example. I worked in West Texas in the drug business as my first job in pharma, and I carried the cardiovascular portfolio for Novartis. And I was in an awesome market for the bag that I was carrying, but I really had to access, a particular patient type in order to drive market share that would catch, kind of somebody's eye.
Right.
And I did that, and going to probably the second or third pod meeting that I had in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, our VP was going to be there. And I kind of broke down my whole market and talked to him about how I messaged the suite of products that we had. And I was excited about what I was talking about. And I had I didn't just have the canned message that they give you on the detail piece. I gave some specific examples, and I told a story, and I was excited about that story. And Lance, our RVP, he didn't say anything to me at the meeting. My boss at the time, Shauna, she's like, "You did a heck of a job." And probably about 6 months after that, Joe, I got a call from Lance, and he said, "Would you like to move to San Antonio?" And I'm sitting on the back patio with my wife, and I was like, "Well, yeah." So he and I started talking about the opportunity to grow and take on a team, which really sung to me because it was, not only do I get to sell, but I get to lead and coach people too. The first toll gate, if I wasn't performing, you don't get in position. And the second toll gate is you got to have, when you get the opportunity, and you don't know when the opportunity is, you really don't. So when your boss says, "Hey, I want you to do this presentation at our next district meeting," I mean, you don't just prepare. I mean, you prepare like it's the freaking Oscars.
Yeah.
And doing that, and again, Lance didn't say boo to me at the meeting. He didn't lead on. I mean, I knew I did a good job. My boss told me I did a good job, but that opened the door for me when there was an opportunity, and then I stepped through that door.
That's awesome. I love it. Now, besides performance, and obviously we're talking about, taking every opportunity, making the most of it.
Yeah.
Are there any other characteristics that you see? Because sometimes, as we both know, the top sales reps, they don't always make a great manager.
Right.
So what are other controllables that sales reps can be doing from day one to align themselves with those skills? Like for instance, obviously we know getting your admin work in on time and stuff
Right.
like that.
The table stakes. Yeah. I mean, those things are, you don't want to be on anybody's list. You don't want to be a problem. So definitely that it is critically important. Really demonstrating that you've got an interest in growth. And most frontline managers are heavily invested in your long-term development, because if you feel engaged and like your boss is investing in you, your longevity is going to be greater there. Frontline sales managers are selfish by nature too. Your success is their success. So they're going to be
Help
looking
me.
for opportunities to engage you long term, because if they can keep a successful person in role for 3 years versus 18 months, that is the return on that is phenomenal. So really engaging your manager and what your developmental goals are, and again demonstrating that you have the capacity for that. And oftentimes you take a peak performing sales rep, and they don't want to manage people, or they don't want to lead. They just want to get out there. They want to own the relationship. They want to make the kill, and they don't want to diagnose why it is that they're good at things. But there's some people that are, they're good performers, but they know how they're getting there, and they can demonstrate that. And if that person can say, this is how I've gotten there, and they have completely ripped down the gory details of their entire territory and said, this is how I've driven sales in this micro market. Now that speaks to a manager and a second line manager to go, okay, we might have somebody that is a true leader of people here, because they can break down and then articulate to somebody else how they succeeded. Just like if you talk to a phenomenal athlete, oftentimes, somebody will say, well, how'd you do that? And they're like, God just reached down and touched me on the head, and I was allowed to do that. Well, somebody that has had to really work and work and work and work, kind of that somebody with middling talent, but has had to really grind it out, that may be your next phenomenal leader. So, letting your boss know that, these are the attributes that I have, and I can do this, and this is why I'd be good at that. God didn't necessarily touch me on the head and say, greatest salesperson in the world, right, go forth and multiply. I've had to really work at this, and that's something that we're all tasked with. So.
Now, obviously you had sales leaders that you've worked with throughout your career, but did you have any true mentors that helped guide you that you truly respected, that helped guide you in your path?
Yes, at every stop that I've had, and cross-functional mentors. I've mentors in operations, and when I went to work in the nuclear business, I didn't know anything about nuclear medicine or radioactivity in a melting ice cube, and really falling at the feet of the experts in the field, and getting their mentorship was critically important for me. Again, every stop that I ever had, I was looking for a mentor, and oftentimes multiple mentors, depending on their skill set and just personal connection. So oftentimes you've got mentors, and you'll get at different companies, they'll assign a mentorship program, right, and sometimes that's great. Not suggesting that it isn't, but sometimes that organic relationship, that's the goal. That really is the magic. And as you develop in your career, what you'll learn is a lot of the people that you work with or work for you become mentors in many respects. And that engagement really becomes critical, because it keeps you as a somebody that's a little longer in the tooth and has gray hair. It keeps you relevant, and that becomes really important. So it really is a symbiotic relationship.
And what would you say to individuals that are doing everything you're saying, like that are hitting that roadblock? So they've taken advantage of those opportunities, they're crushing their number, and now they're at that point where they're like, shit, I want to be a manager now.
Yeah.
How would you approach that situation if
And
you're the rep?
in terms of
Like they're looking to
them,
become a manager now.
yeah,
They've done the right things. They've hit their number, and it's kind of they hit a roadblock,
yeah.
and now they start saying like, okay, do I have to move on to somewhere else? So how would you navigate that situation for them? An honest.
And I think sometimes, and that's you have to be the steward of your own career, and understand, or try to the best that you can to take ownership of your career path. And sometimes the doors are shut where you are, but if you have that desire to move on and to be a leader, sometimes it takes that move to another place that will give you that opportunity. And that can be really hard because we become true believers in the companies that we work for, and the products and services that we sell. And that's a huge thing because that gives you that authenticity, which is really important to have. But it also tugs on your heart because you're like, golly, how do I leave this? Well, sometimes you've got to know what's most important, and being the steward of your career, you might have to leave in order for you to grow. And sometimes that's painful, or most times it's painful, I should say.
And do you think it's okay to have that honest conversation with your manager and just being straight up like, hey, I feel like I'm doing well. I'm looking for opportunities to grow.
Yeah, it absolutely is. There's and I don't want to be too Pollyanna about this. If you've worked with your manager for a few years, you're gonna have developed trust, and you're gonna know the boundaries that you can go to and have a candid discussion about your development. And they should be able to give you some real feedback. And having had this experience in my professional life, you owe it to your people to say, it probably is time for you to go on and do something more outside of this particular organization, and whether that's if a young sales rep has been working in an organization that doesn't have a lot of structure, and needs to stretch their wings and get exposed to a larger corporate environment, maybe has some desire to move into marketing, moving into a larger, more complex company is right for them at their particular point in their career. And having that dialogue with your manager is critical. And a good manager will be straight with you around when it's time. And now it's going to hurt them a little bit because, again, they're invested in you.
They don't want to lose a good rep. Yeah.
But and you'll know if they're legit, they're going to be looking out for you primarily. And there's going to be changes in careers. That's just the way that things are.
Yeah. And I get that from reps sometimes. They're like, Joe, I'm fearful that my manager feels that now I'm competition for them.
Yeah.
And really, but like you said, for the most part, most managers, they want to see you succeed. They're good people. I mean, once in a while you might, see a tough guy out there that's really out to get you or trying to derail your career, but that's been rare in my experiences.
Yeah. If you're, I kind of think of it like a coaching tree. You hear about, the Nick Saban coaching tree, or, pick a famous coach, John Wooden. I'm pretty sure that John Wooden wasn't concerned about somebody usurping, his greatness. Probably what he was looking for is like, hey, the more people that I can proselytize and take on this message, the more lives that I can sow into through the people that I've taught and coached. And most managers, if they're worth their salt, they're going to be like, really a measure of my success is how at the rate and number of my people get promoted. It's like when you run a contest and you're like, well, 70% of my people went to Maui for, the contest. As a manager, you may not have gone to Maui, but 70% of my people did. And you're like, that's the real measure of success right there.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny you mentioned that with the coaches and the coaching tree, because even though I'm from Jersey, I'm a Bears fan. And every time there was a Monday night or Thursday night game, whenever the Packers were on, I mean, back then when he coached Mike Holmgren, they would always show his coaching tree and how there's like 15
Right.
NFL coaches at the time that were in there.
Yeah.
And as a Bears fan, you're like, all right, we get it. He's good. Who cares? Yeah. But it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the truth. But we're going to pause right now. And James, just checking with you. Do we have any questions from the crowd? And we'll let them do a little Q&A here and let Joel answer some questions.
We do have a bunch of questions. Luckily, I'm a Jets fan and I can't bust your balls about liking the Bears. But we got do you think that the pathway to leadership is faster or harder now compared to when you started?
That's a tough question. I think that, there's a need for great leadership, and, if people demonstrate those capabilities, they're going to be sought out. So it'd be hard for me to answer it was tougher then or it's tougher now. The job market is hard. I would say if you're looking to grow into a leadership position, having a career path at the company you're in will likely be easier because they know you, and it's not like they have to take a gamble on your all the soft skills and all that stuff that they'd have to do for an external candidate. But in terms of 20 years ago versus today, I don't know. We need great leaders, so I do know that.
Well, just to add on to what Joel was saying before, which is, I always like to be able to control the controllables, and what you were saying before really hit home to me because right when you said it, it resonated with many instances in my career where you were presented with a task, a presentation, for instance, like you were talking about, and you get that initial like, oh man, I don't want to do this shit. I got so much on my plate. Now I got to do a presentation in front of everyone by Thursday. I got 3 cases tomorrow. And it's always those moments that where you suck it up and you get through it. And those are the opportunities, like you said, Joel, that are huge. So look for those opportunities that are presented to you, and the ones that you don't want to do, the one thing you don't want to fly across the country. To me, it's like those are the opportunities that help you propel you to the next level. So the more that it sucks, do it, because it's like Joel said, that's what's going to help you get to the top. And it doesn't matter if it's 30 years ago or today, those opportunities still exist.
Yeah. There's, it's almost, and a presentation is not really adversity, but, when you have things that, feel like the sky is falling and, the challenge is insurmountable, thinking about those types of things are like, that's how people win awards. And that's how careers get catapulted, because, somebody that's looking from the outside in going, it's not looking good in South Texas, and they may not recover from this. And if they figure out a way to recover and to exceed in that, then they're like, we've got to figure out what this person's next career path is. the adversity when you go, oh my God, there's this quota is a killer. You got to look at that and go, well, if I figure this quota out, not only am I going to make a truckload of money, but somebody's going to go, holy crap, how did they do that? The adversity is where the gold is.
I love it. I love it. I brought up just one quick point because we were talking about working out, and everyone, especially guys, any guys on this call that are 25 and older, most guys stop doing squats and cleans in the weight room after a certain age, but they'll keep doing the bench press. You can be 120 years old and you're still going to bench. And benching isn't, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easy depending on how much weight you put on. But nobody wants to squat and nobody wants to do cleans. And typically the guys that are squatting and cleaning, obviously if they're doing it safely, they're going to see better gains because it's the things that are tough. That's getting back to that adversity you're talking about. The benching guys, they're everywhere. Do the tough things, and that's how you're going to get to the next level is the point, like you were saying with adversity. So, but go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. Keep adding your points.
Come off like a meathead with the weightlifting analogies.
Yep, all 140 pounds of you, Joe. What's the best way to think about career progression in an industry where turnover can be really high?
The best way to think about career progression in an industry with high turnover, I think keeping focused on the goal at hand. If you're dialed in on the wildly important goal, the career progression is going to be there. And Joe mentioned this, there's going to be uncontrollables in your career arc. But if you control the controllables, and you're dialed into, your wildly important goals, you're going to be less susceptible to that. That's, control the things that you can, and that's going to create opportunities for you. And I know that probably sounds like a cliche, but cliches are, well, for a reason. They're true.
Well, you're so right though, because if you're any athlete, like again, even though I'm a Bears fan, everything else I'm Jersey, New York, so I'm Knicks, I'm Yankees, and first person that comes to mind for me is Derek Jeter. I don't think Derek Jeter became a Yankee and said, I'm going to be the future. I'm going to be the face of the team and the leader and the captain. I'm going to be known as the captain.
Yeah.
He just went out there and played well every night.
Right.
And that's all he focused on. It's just being great. All those, because I tell a lot of people too, they want to get into management and they feel that that's showing that they're more successful, the bigger title they have. If you want a big title, start your own company and call yourself the CEO. It's that simple.
And
but,
the truth of the matter is, at most companies, a high performing territory manager, that upper quartile, they're going to make more money than their boss does.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not uncommon. So nobody should apologize for, wanting to work in an industry that pays well. But if that's your primary motivator, the money component, that individual contributor role oftentimes is going to be, long-term, career-wise, financially much more lucrative than a management role. And you've got, there's some, you get squeezed on both ends, from your people and then from your boss, and you've got to be that filter that delivers the messages that absolutely need to be delivered, but you also need to protect your people from some of the noise there, and then you're filtering from the bottom up as well, and filtering and making sure that your people are seen in the best possible light, and to not get paid what your peak performers are. Sometimes you go, man, it'd be easier to be an individual contributor and not have to feel the squeeze all the time. So before you want to take that step, evaluate that too.
But that's a great point what you were saying, especially before about some of the top reps making more than their managers. When I was at Boston Scientific, there was a rep that, when you're working at the company, how much everyone makes basically just by looking at their sales numbers. It was simple math.
Yeah.
And
the scorecard is there.
Yeah, he was crushing it. He was making about $700 to $750 a year. He was doing really well. And he wound up taking the management role where he would make between like $250 to $300.
Right.
And when I saw him at one of the meetings, I was like, I have to know, like, why did you do that? And he was up front. He's like, hey, man, he goes, I'm traveling everywhere in my territory. I was all up and down the West Coast. I never saw my kids, never saw my wife. He goes, it was just the grind was killing me and the quality of life's not there. And it doesn't matter how much they pay you. And then he actually took the management role for a huge pay reduction.
Yeah.
So again, you got to weigh all variables. It's not just about titles.
Yeah.
So James?
We got a question from LinkedIn. My man, Jordan Flax. JB, thanks for doing this. Talk about what are the non-negotiables during an interview process, especially for all the candidates looking to break into the industry. And the second part, also, what daily habits separate the med device reps from good to great? We could bring that back up for part 2 if you forget.
Yeah, that first part, non-negotiables. The first competency that I think is, somebody demonstrating initiative. And I think that's the most important thing that any sales professional has to have. Second is resilience. You're working in an industry that you're going to have enormous challenges. You're not being hired to go into a good situation. If a territory is open, likelihood is that it was underperforming and they had to make a change. So you're coming into a tough situation, or it's a brand new territory, so it's complete greenfield. So either one of those is, and you might luck into, a completely, awesome territory as a greenfield, but that's not the likelihood. You're going to come into a tough situation regardless. So you've got to be resilient. And then the third is versatility. You've got to be able to figure out how to solve problems and be a gadget person. You absolutely have to be able to do that. And then, kind of wrapping that up is you've got to be self-aware. You've got to understand when your message is hitting home and when it's not. I think those three competencies with that self-awareness component, wrapping it up, I would say that's those are the non-negotiables. So those are the things you really want to focus on.
And then the second part is what daily habits separate the med device reps from good to great?
I think the folks that at the end of the day are able to grind out one more call and do the extra mile stuff. They get up early. They're figuring out a solution for a customer. They have a customer request and that particular part isn't in territory and they figure out a way to get it there. That person, that is critical. I saw a documentary not too long ago where they were interviewing a guy by the name of Tom Moore, who used to be the offensive coordinator for the Colts when Peyton Manning was there. and one of his non-negotiables were, there were like 6 things that are like career killers, and one was, I can't remember exactly how he called it. It was like death by inches or something like that. And the example that Tom gave was, when I can't get to the office at 3:30 in the morning, then that's death by inches. Like then I'm not up to the task to go the extra mile to put in the work to achieve the success. And I think that's what sets people apart. And I'm not talking about, if you've got a commitment, at your children's school that you've got to be at, that you should do one extra call. I'm not suggesting that. You need to have that personal time and buffer. But I'm talking about when it's Friday at 4:15, 4:45, and everybody else has hauled ass for the week, and you go, you know what, I'm doing it. I'm going to do it. That's what sets people apart.
It's 100%. I mean, I'm nodding the whole time because I had a dozen of these calls this week about that, and it really is. It seems that 4:45, I brought up to Sam. I think I said 4:30 on a Friday, but it's that call. It's that one more call that seems, number one, at that time on a Friday, you're not bumping into another rep for the most part. So, you're going in an area where most people aren't even around. So you might even have better access for that tough to see doctor at that time. But putting in that extra mile, you see this with a lot of sales leaders, and you also see with a lot of leaders in many industries. I mean, when I was in the recruiting side of our business, I was reaching out to a bunch of recruiters when I first started to pick their brain on what approaches they used. And some of the biggest recruiters, name-wise, at first I didn't call them. I'm like, they're going to be too busy. And then finally, I just went after the top 100 recruiters. The first people to call me back were the top recruiters.
For a reason.
It's amazing. It's so true. The busiest, you think they're the busiest ones, they're not going to get back to you. No, they're high performers. So they're going to get back to, there's a better chance they're getting back to you because that's in their nature. That's just what they do. That's why they're successful. So it was really impressive to see, that it's not just sale, it's many different industries. High performers, they're going to put the work in, just like you said, and that's where the success is going to come from.
We got Joel, you said you found mentors pretty much at every stop. How do you actually find a good mentor in this industry?
Well, I think, part of that is engaging with your team. And if your manager has got a cadence of accountability set up, you're going to get exposed to people on your team that have complementary skill sets that, you don't necessarily have. And you identify those people and you get in their hip pocket. And sometimes, you got a team of, 8, 10, 12 people, they're going to have complementary skill sets. And you know what areas you need development in identifying them and just saying, hey, I'd love to pick your brain on this solution set because you're like the cat's meow as far as that goes. And be vulnerable and, get in the game.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Just to add one point, because I've done this in my career and I've screwed up where you want to stay, like Joel's saying, stay in those positive zones, stay with the people that are the high performers, stay in those cliques because every company has these different cliques. You don't want to get in that negative, there's like these negative groups that before you know it, you're on the phone with them when you're in the field and you're like, you believe what our company's making us do? I can't believe this crap. This sucks. What is our manager doing? We have no leadership. Our product is garbage. And when you're at that point, just leave because it's a toxic place. It's a toxic way to live. You don't want to work like that. But when you stick around those high performers, and the point I'm bringing that up because you will find mentors in that group. You're not going to find mentors in that negative, toxic group. So just stick with those high performers first, like Joel's saying, the people that are complementary to you. And searching for a mentor isn't going to happen. It's just going to happen just by you being exposed and, finding the people that you respect and admire. And then you could start taking, following them and start taking advice from them before you know it, you have a mentor.
Right. We got, as a leader, how do you spot reps with true long-term leadership potential?
The want to, the desire becomes pretty clear. And I'll give you an example. When I was selling capital equipment, and I had a rep in the DC Baltimore area, and he got a plan hung on him that was insurmountable. And he'd been a peak performer. We had an occasion to, we were doing a training meeting for an independent rep group, MTMC, in Dallas. And we had just, rolled out our business plan effort for the year. And he said, "Hey, we need to carve out some time. We got to figure this out." So it was, really getting down into the guts of his plan. And he knew what he needed to do. He had, Virginia was part of his territory and was a little underpenetrated. And the guts of his territory, DC, Baltimore, had some things in Q4 that if he could get to Q4, we're going to carry him through, but he had to figure that out. And Virginia was the component of that to bridge him to Q4. So he knew what the answers were, but bouncing that off, and somebody that is really heavily invested like that, wants your input, but has already figured out a pathway. Those are the people that have some chops and are in it, and can do the heavy lifting and would be excellent future leaders.
Yeah, agree 100%. The only thing I would add is that whenever you have a challenge, whenever you're trying to figure something out and you're brainstorming with your manager, always show that you've thought about this first. And you try to come up with some sort of solution. It doesn't have to be, this is exactly what you're doing. Joel, I don't need your input, but I'm just going to tell you what we're doing. No, it's, here's my thoughts. Joel, what do you think? And then let's talk about it. But come with some sort of plan. Show that you don't need to be told what to do every step of the way. You at least try to do it on your own. Might not be the right answer, but at least shows that you show them the initiative.
There's that word, initiative.
There you go. It's the truth.
Do you think you need to change companies to move up faster, or is staying put better for a long-term play?
I think understanding really what your end game is. So, starting your career or your job at a company with the end in mind is really important. Kind of your exit strategy, if you will. And I think that's more important than saying, will I move up faster by changing companies? If you feel like the company that you're with provides the right environment and opportunities, and you may have to stay there an extra 2 years in order to get to where you want to go. But if you feel like you're heavily invested in that and will get you to your ultimate end goal, then staying should be your goal. Change for change's sake, I wouldn't necessarily be a proponent of that. But if in a 25-year arc, in order for you to get from A to Z, it might require you to make 3 or 4 hops in order for you to do that.
One warning I would just give any young reps out there that, wherever that question came from, just be on the lookout when you are in this industry for a while, you start to do well. And if you're so obsessed with those titles, and like we were talking about before, you're going to have opportunities that get approached you, especially with startups. And it could sound great because they're offering you a VP title. And then you find out that you're the VP and you have 2 sales reps. So are you really a vice president, or did they just give you a nice title that sounds really good to entice you to come somewhere? So don't be so obsessed with titles. Guys, it's great to get those promotions. It's great to move up, but don't just chase titles, because you could get opportunities presented to you that you got to look at the whole opportunity. If you're going to be the president of a small company and then they have no reimbursement, they're not on any GPOs, they have all these challenges, the pricing is crazy out of whack with all the competition, then it's not going to last long anyway. So look at the overall opportunity. Don't just look to jump for a title.
Yeah, totally agree.
Because I've done it.
Well, yeah.
It happened.
From experience.
Yes.
Last question I got for you. If you could give one piece of advice to a rep in their first 12 months, what would it be?
Start with the end in mind. Know why you're there, and know what you want out of it. I'll go back to this example. When I was, at the home healthcare agency to begin my career, I really wanted structure and a robust training environment. I really needed that. So be in touch with those things. So as you're looking for your next role, kind of be there and start with the end in mind, and say, I want to take control of my career. I want to ascend to this. And when you achieve that, reevaluate. Do I continue on my career path at company X, or do I move on to the next company? And you control your controllables. And there are going to be things that happen in your career that are outside of your control, but you want to steer your ship as much as possible.
100% agree. Absolutely. It comes back to, guys, when they're asking you, what's your why? Why do you want to work here? Why medical sales? Like Joel was saying, but take that in that first year, look at that and evaluate. Come back to your why? And is this helping you meet your why? Is this what you really wanted to do? Because sometimes it might not be everything that you thought, and you might want to pivot. But, knowing what your why is, and you should, if you're that passionate, you should be trying to work with that passion and make that, your career path, because that's how you're going to be happy. So, but, again, Joel, I thank you so much. I mean, this has been a great, great talk. I mean, I could sit here for hours with you, and I'm sure the audience could do the same and keep asking questions. So I really do appreciate that. It's been a great show. I definitely would like for you to come back if you can. So, and any parting words, any thoughts, please feel free to share to the crowd, any parting advice.
Just to control the controllables, and start with the end in mind. It's your career, and bloom where you're planted. So, a little sage advice from my mother-in-law.
I'm definitely stealing that, just so you know.
Yes.
And for anyone that's on the podcast and they have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. I can funnel everything and send it to Joel. If you have direct questions, you can send it to me. You could send me a DM. Also, again, please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching. For anybody that's looking for information about the RepPath Academy or a one-on-one coaching, and especially if you're a lobby member, please submit the promo code when you message me, Licata, Licata, and that'll give you additional discounts. So I want to thank Joel again for doing this. This was great. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I hope to see you soon. Again, we're going to be doing these every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So I look forward to having you guys join us in the future. Have a great week.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joel.